Good morning. Your mom left you, so now you're going to be all by yourself. Do you want to go with them? Go quick now. Nope. All right. Go now or forever hold your peace. All right. Oh, he's coming. Miss Kimberly, let him out. There you go. Well, good morning, everyone. And happy Mother's Day to all ladies. Right? I think all ladies, even those who have no children, because every lady that I know of has someone that they mother, right? Somebody in their life that they have encouraged and helped. And so I appreciate that very much. And those ladies that pour into our life, I have several mothers, and I call them heart moms, right? Those are those ladies in your life that just speak to your heart and are kind to you, and they become like your mom. And I have several heart moms. And so happy Mother's Day to all you moms and heart moms. Amen. So this is a question for you ladies. Since it's Mother's Day, we'll start with you. You ever thought to yourself that I'm just one person? There's not much that I can do on my own. You ever kind of felt that way in your life? And guys, you can answer this too, right? I'm just one. Just one of me, right? How can I make an impact on anything? It's just one of me, right? You can't do everything. I try, and it just, there's too much going on. I can't fix everything, right? Maybe you feel like you're the only one that is working hard in a specific area in the church. I'll hear people say this all the time. Pastor, you don't understand. I'm the only one out there doing this. And I go, well, that's because God called you to do it. So good job. Right? And we see this all the time. Maybe you feel like you're alone and seeing a need, like, and now I see a need and I need to fulfill that need, but I'm only one person. How am I going to fulfill that need? And I hear this people all the time. You know what? The church should do this. And I go, you know what that means? If you feel the church should do it and you're the church, go for it, right? What they mean is everyone else should do because I see a need, right? And I've actually had people get mad at me that I wasn't getting the entire church to do what is on their heart. And I was like, God put that on your heart. If I had you do everything that everyone else had on their heart, we wouldn't get anything done, right? So sometimes we feel like we're alone. We've all at some point, I think, in our life thought that we really, do we really count? Does our one voice, our one action, does it really count? That there's just one person, can I do it all? Well, I'm here to tell you, nothing is further from the truth. You can do way more than you think you can, even as one person. And that's what we talk about today. Because I believe the feeling of feeling like you can't do anything is actually a lie from Satan. He wants you to feel that way because it's not true. He wants you to feel like you can't do anything, that you're all alone, it's only just one person. So then we become ineffective. We become exactly what we feel. I feel I can't do anything, so then we end up not doing anything, right? So let me give you a few instances where only one person made a difference. In 1845, Oliver Cromwell was given control of England by one vote. One vote caused Charles I of England to be executed. One vote. In 1776, one vote caused English to be the official language of the United States instead of German. One vote brought Texas into the Union. One vote saved President Andrew from being impeached. In 1875, one vote changed France from a monarchy to a republic. One vote gave Rutherford B. Hayes the presidency of the United States. One vote gave Adolf Hitler control of the Nazi Party. In 1941, the vote saved the selective service system, the draft, just 6 weeks before Pearl Harbor. From these situations, you can see how much difference just one person can make. And I even brought up Bible story, right? Bible story after Bible story after Bible story, we can read about God using one person to change history. In fact, God even speaks of this power of one. Listen to what God thinks about the importance of the impact of one person. Ezekiel 22:30, he says, I sought for a man, one, among them who would build up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land so that I would not destroy it, but I found no one. He's looking for one man, one person. God told Ezekiel to tell all of Israel, because they had become wicked and the priests were corrupt, that he was going to destroy Israel. If he could have found one man to stand up for him, he wouldn't have done it. One person to stand in the gap for this wicked land, and he would save it. But sadly, he found none. One person could have saved an entire nation. When Abraham was trying to get God to spare Sodom and Gomorrah because of one man's intercession, God was willing to spare it if he could find 10 men that would stand in the gap. Now, if you know the story, he starts with more than 10 and keeps getting God less and less and less. I don't even understand why Abraham didn't go, well, how about one? Like God was with him all the way through it. He's like, how about 20? Yeah. 15? Yeah. 10? Yeah. Why did Abraham just go, how about one? I wonder now if God would have said, yeah, if you find one, I would have done it, right? But he said 10. He couldn't find 10 men. So you and I, as one person, can make a difference if we follow God's leading and get on board with his mission. One preacher wrote this years ago: I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but I still can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do. I think that makes sense, doesn't it? I can't do it all, but I know I can't do it all, but I can do something. So I'm going to stand up and do something, whatever that is. So I want to show you from some Bible stories the impact of one person. And the challenge for you and I this morning as we listen is this: as one person, all right, to be available to God. Be ready for him to use you and to make an impact for him. Just one person. That you would say, whatever you need, God, I'm going to be available if I'm just the only one who'll do it. I want you to do that like Esther and like her uncle Mordecai. Esther made a huge difference. Esther became queen. King Ahasuerus or Xerxes, depending on how you want to, what language you want to use. But she was a Jew, and she had an uncle named Mordecai. And Mordecai lived in the same town, and he was able to kind of give her some guidance, and he kind of oversaw her and kind of encouraged her. And so she becomes queen of this Babylonian non-Jewish, nation. And Mordecai, her uncle, was there giving her advice and counsel. And because of the wisdom of her uncle and her following God as God led her, the king loved Esther more than any other woman. The Bible says because she gained grace and favor in his sight. So he set the royal crown on her and made her his queen. But one of the king's men did not like Mordecai. He was kind of out to punish him, out to get him. All right, his name is Haman. And he did it, and he said, well, in order to get Mordecai, I'm going to kill all the Jews and have all the Jews destroyed. So Haman, one of the king's men, manipulated the king to say, well, yeah, I'll write those letters. So he writes a decree and has a decree sent out to all over the land that literally says this, that everyone who reads this should cause the destruction, slaughter, and annihilation of the Jews, both young and old, little children and women. That's the letter that went out from King, the one married to Esther, right? So Esther's uncle Mordecai was devastated, began to cry aloud when Esther's was told about this. One of her men heard it, went and told her. She was devastated, but she wanted to minister to her uncle. So Mordecai, her uncle, asked her to intervene. And this is the exchange between the two. Now, this is going in between one person. He'd go talk with Mordecai and then go talk with Esther, give the message to Mordecai and go talk to Esther. And so we're kind of watching this scene play out. Esther starts here with a message to her uncle. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that whoever, whether man or woman, wishes to come to the king at the inner court has to be summoned. There's one law: to put him to death, unless for some reason the king should hold out the golden scepter so that he may live. I, however, have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days. So Mordecai had asked her to go speak to the king about this, and she's like, yeah, that doesn't happen. No one goes to the king unless they're summoned, and if they do go before the king and they're not summoned, they're dead, unless the king holds up a golden scepter, right? So Mordecai replied to Esther this way: do not think that in the king's palace you will be more likely to escape than all the other Jews. For if you remain silent at this time, protection and deliverance for the Jews will be ordained for some other place, but you and your father's house shall be destroyed. And who knows if may have attained royal position for such a time as this. Then Esther goes back to Mordecai and she sends this message: well, go gather all the Jews who can be found in Susa. That's the village that they were living in, right? Then fast for me. Stop eating and drinking for 3 days, night or day. I and my younger women will fast likewise. Only then would I dare to go to the king, since it's not allowed by law. And if I perish, I perish. So when Mordecai had heard this, he did as she asked him to do. This statement rings out all over history, right? Across time, we know this story. And many have heard it spoken many, many times. Great struggle, great persecution. Who knows if you may obtain royal position for such a time as this? Right? That statement, for such a time as this. But here is the cool part about the story. There were two people who thought they were one. Right? Mordecai thought it was all up to him to make sure it got taken care of. Esther thought it was all up to her to make sure it got taken care of. Two people, one individual person thinking they have the entire nation of the Jews upon their shoulders. The first one was Mordecai. He was a man, the uncle, right? When Mordecai learned all that had been done, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, went out in the middle of the city and cried a bitter cry. So Mordecai heard about this decree. He went out in the middle of the city, tore off his clothes, put sackcloth on, ashes, was crying out. He was in mourning, right? He went before everyone mourning his people. And I think God used single individuals in this story, both a male and a female, to show us that he uses men and women who seem insignificant, that may have more of an impact on the world around them than they think they could. Here's a story of one man who made an impact, though he felt alone. He wanted to make a difference anyway, and he did. And it began with doing something that was great risk to him. You see, Mordecai, being a Jew, and the decree was going out to destroy all Jews, basically went out in the middle of the city and said, hello, I'm a Jew. Right? He didn't do it like, I'll do this and I'll be okay. He knew that there's a possibility of what he was doing was going to direct all attention to him and he'd be killed. So he knew that he couldn't enter in the king's gate, but he was trying to do the best he could because he needed a message to get to Esther. And he didn't know any other way to make it happen. So her maids, her chamberlain, they got the message. They heard, they're like, hey, your crazy uncle's out there with ashes and sackcloth on, mourning. She's like, why? What's going on? So they go out there and say, what's going on? And Mordecai tells her, and she's like, oh my gosh, well, I can't do anything about it. And it goes back to Mordecai, and Mordecai goes, yes, you can. You're there maybe for such a time as this. Don't think that you're going to be spared because of this. In fact, your whole household could be killed. Right? So he lays it on pretty thick to her, right? He risks his life based on this new decree, but he knew it would get her attention, and he didn't care for his own life. And so he told Esther's helper, the chamberman, about all that happened, told her what the king was doing, her husband was doing, right? He's just one man, thinking, seeking wisdom from God, asking God to lead and to intervene, asking God to do the right and wise thing, to lead them to do what was right in this situation. It's interesting also that Mordecai sent her just the facts. He didn't send her an emotional message. Yes, it sounds emotional because you said, well, you could die and your family, but that wasn't an emotional response. That was the facts. He was saying, this is literally what could happen. Sometimes when we're seeking help, our emotions overwhelm us, that we're not effective in giving the information that we need in order to get the help that we need. Right? It's hard sometimes to get the help or encouragement. If you ever listen to 911 tapes and over and over again, if you've ever been watch those on TV or the actual real tapes, they say all the time that people call in, their voice is 3 octaves higher, they're usually talking a lot faster, and many times they're crying, and they can't understand where they're at, who they are, what the problem is, and they have to calm them down, right? Well, Mordecai wasn't like, we're all going to die. It's horrible. He gave her the facts. Your king, your husband said this. This is what's going to happen. What are you going to do about it? The facts, right? So Mordecai encouraged her in the message for such a time as this. He tells her that he truly believes that God put her in the king's court for this reason. Here's one man who did what it took, what he was able to do, what he could do. He gave all that he could do to God, and God used his presence and his action mightily. But there's more than one, right? There was Mordecai, and there was Esther. Esther was in her own world. Probably felt like the fate of the people was on her shoulders. Once she hears this, she's like, why is Mordecai putting this on me? I'm in here in the king's court. I'm not out there. I didn't even know it was going to happen. If he had never told me, I would have never known. Thanks, uncle. Right? She was a new queen, getting settled into her new life, and everyone was pampering her and bringing her jewelry and perfumes and giving her wonderful baths and smelling salts and new clothes. And now all of a sudden, she's got to uproot and change that entire routine because her uncle asked her to do something. Well, God really called her to give up everything to save her people. So the first thing she did was to think through what she heard. Right? It helped that she got accurate facts because then she could kind of really think through. Right? So she was trying to take the emotion out of it. The emotion is, no, there's no way. But I got to stop and think, okay, so facts are this, right? She is careful how she approaches this situation. There's a lot of times we have sensitive situations that come on in our life, and if we don't approach it the right way, we can make it worse. So we feel like we're all alone. I can't make any difference out of it. But if we approach the situation with the best heart we could, with God leading us, we'll get through whatever situation it is and realize, oh, I'm not alone. Now, she could die doing this, and she knows it, right? She counted the cost. She knew that the rule was no man or woman, right, could come to the king's inner court unless they'd been summoned. If they did, absolute ruling was death, unless the king pointed his golden scepter, right? So she says, however, I have not been summoned to come to the king for these 30 days. It's been 30 days since I've been summoned to the king. What are the chances he's going to summon me in the next day or so? Probably none, right? I've actually heard people say that she was kind of being a coward. I don't know why people think that, right? I believe she's speaking out loud truths. I think she's just making facts again. Here are the facts. This is what happens. If you come before the king, you could die. He hasn't called me, so these are the facts. Let me play it out, go through the scenarios in my head, speak it out loud to someone who's passing back and forth wisdom. We should always be smart about that. God, I'm in a real predicament here. Speak it out loud. You know God already knows it, right? He doesn't need to hear it from you, right? God, I'm kind of in a pickle. I don't really know what to do. I feel like I'm all alone here. Speak it out loud. Go ahead and say it. God knows what's going on, but I think God likes to know that we know it, right? God, you know that I'm all alone. He's like, yes, I know that, but do you know that? Let's talk about that, right? And we get to speak it out. And I think that's what's going on here. And then when seeking a solution to a problem, to voice all the issues and details. If you're talking with someone and getting counsel, or you're talking with someone to kind of just speak it out loud, to kind of, sometimes it's easier just to, if you say it out loud to yourself, you're like, oh, when you put it that way, right? And sometimes that helps. But I don't know how many times I hear people tell me what's going on, but they only tell me part of the story, right? Don't tell part of the story. Tell all the story. My wife jokes about, and we call it the I need an appointment to the doctor syndrome. You need an appointment to see the doctor because you got some sniffles. So you call the doctor, hey, doctor, I've got some sniffles. My kid has sniffles, whatever. It's like, oh, we can't see you for 2 weeks. Well, they have a temperature of 110. Like, first of all, it starts off with sniffles, and then it ramps up real quick. What got I got to say in order to get an appointment today, right? The leg fell off. I don't know, right? Well, why don't you start with that, right? Start with the worst, but they always start with the sniffles part, right? And so this idea sometimes is we do the same thing when we're seeking help with someone else. I'm all alone, and God brings us someone to talk to, and we only tell them part of the story. For whatever reason. We don't want them to know the whole story. We're embarrassed by it. We think that they're going to think less of us or whatever. We tell them part of the story. Well, whoever you're talking to is only going to answer you part of the answer back. And it's usually going to be wrong because they don't have the whole story. But Mordecai was honest with her. She was honest with Mordecai. Here's the facts. But then she does something remarkable. I am one woman. The weight of the nation is on me. But thousands of people are out there. She realized that she wasn't just one, but she was one of thousands. She called on all the other ones to come together and fast, to pray for a time to seek God's wisdom and to seek God's leading. She said, go, gather all the Jews who can be found in Susa and fast for me. Stop eating and drinking for 3 days, nights, and a day. What she realized was, I'm only one person, but I have thousands around me. And this is what I need you to hear and understand. You're never one person. You're never alone. Whatever God is putting on you, whatever God is putting on your heart, whatever situation you're in, you're not just one person. You have many around you that are there to assist you, to guide you, to give you wisdom, to go through it with you, to pray for you, whatever it is. So often we get stuck in our heads that we're all alone and there's no one else. All the problems are on me and me alone. But she realized she wasn't alone. There were thousands of others with her, and there was God. So you thousands of people, whoever you are, I want you to pray and fast. To who? To God. For what? For me to have wisdom. I'm going to go do it, but I need God's help, and I need you to pray about that. She knew that if God intervened, she could live. At least better chance to live if God was intervening, right? And so she said, well, I can't do anything until there's prayer and fasting. And then she committed to the task and resolved, whatever the answer is, only then would I dare go to the king. Only then after the prayer and fasting would I go to the king. And if I perish, I perish. We've heard this before. Remember the 3 young men who went into the fire? Right? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And they said, we're not going to bow down to you. We're not going to worship you if you put us in the fire. If we perish, we perish. If we die, we die. Often we don't make that statement to God. Often we're not bold enough to tell God that. What we want is to be saved. What we want is to be fixed. What we want is the situation to go away. And we're not going to have it any other way. And if it happens any other way, God didn't do it. God didn't help me. God failed me. But if we went into it and say, God, I need your help with this situation. God, I need you to fix this. I need this, whatever. But whatever happens, I have faith in you. I'll always be yours. I will always follow you no matter what. See, typically, we don't say those things because we don't want that result. We have to be able to willingly say, well, if I perish, I perish. If I die, I die. So she's about to do what God was leading to do. And the result of these 2 people who are only one person, right? That they weren't only one, and they never were. See, they were already there for such a time as this, as one. They're already there with the hundreds of thousands of others that were there. God already put them there, and they're already there with God watching it all. God saved the nation, And two individual ones decided to stand up and let God do what God does, to become united with him. So let me ask you this question. Why? Why would one person who was all alone do what they did? Why would one person who no one was in the corner with them do what they did? Did they do it because they're obligated by God's laws to stand up? No, they weren't. They weren't obligated by God's laws to stand up. Did they do it because if they didn't, other people wouldn't like them? Nope. Did they do it because that's what you're supposed to do? That's what tradition and the religious order says to do? No. So why do they do it? If they weren't obligated to do it, and they weren't done by law to do it, and by tradition they weren't supposed to do it. In fact, based on everything else that's going on, the tradition was keep your mouth quiet. So why they do it? I think they did it because they love God. They love God, and because they love God, they love God's people. I think if we look at the story from a real perspective and would really kind of understand the historical aspect of what's going on, there is no danger probably to Esther at all, ever. And the reality, even though Mordecai said, don't think you're safe in there, the reality is the king loved her more than all others. He saw favor and grace in her that he didn't see anyone else. God already put her in a place to be protected by the king, and God could have done it and probably would have done it even if she hadn't done anything. Mordecai, being her uncle, had already had a place before the king. The king knew who Mordecai was. And because she was there, there's a good chance that he already saw that, well, I'm going to protect Mordecai. He's her uncle. So there's a good possibility that Mordecai and Esther would have lived. They could have protected themselves just by being quiet. So I don't think that they were doing it out of self-preservation either. I think if they really thought about it, look, if we just keep our mouths quiet, we'll be fine. Now the rest of the people, well, that's what happens to them. They can move if they want to. But we're going to be fine. Right? They didn't say that. They didn't think that way. What they saw was, I love God more than anything else. Because I love God more than anything else, I love his people as he loves his people. So down to the rubber meets the road kind of stuff for you and I, here we are. What purpose does God have for you today? Why do you think you're here today? Why do you think you're alive in 2025 for such a time as this? I believe that. I believe you are here. I believe that God will, if you will allow him, God will use you to make an impact for his kingdom with you and your life. I believe with all my heart that he wants to use all of us, use every single one of us here as individuals in his kingdom in some way. Some in a great public way, like Mordecai, and others in a private way, one-on-one, like Esther. We think about the impact that we can make in people around us if we allow God to use us. So it's not always standing up before everyone and like preaching to hundreds of thousands. Sometimes it's talking to one. Sometimes it's just sharing your heart with one. Sometimes it's just taking one and showing love and compassion and God's love for that one. Sometimes it's just a simple note or a simple phone call. But if we will be used by God and allow God to use us, I believe he can use us to make an impact for those around us. So here's what I desire. I desire that he uses me for his honor and his glory. And that I would be used in his kingdom because I love him and because I love what he loves, his church. And if he'll use me in a public way, great. If he'll use me in a private way, no one knows about it, great. However God can use me, I want to stand up and say, I'm alone, I'm one, but God, you use me to impact however you want me to impact. And what about this? I think about this all the time, and I think it's interesting to kind of wonder ifs. But how many of you have never heard of Billy Graham? Raise your hand if you've never heard of Billy Graham. Yeah, most of us heard of Billy Graham, right? How many of y'all have ever heard of Julian Chivitan? Anybody ever heard of him? No? You never heard of him? That's Billy Graham's grandson. Billy Graham's grandson is a pastor and a preacher in Florida. I've known him for years. I've known about him, read his books, known all about him. He had a horrible, horrible ministry, failed, fell down. I'm not telling you anything he won't tell you. Go look at his Facebook page. He'll tell you right out, but I have failed so many times, it's ridiculous. He says, right? He has been fallen, and he said the last time he saw his grandpa just looked at him like he never did anything wrong. He said, he always loved me, right? And he is now impacting people in ways that his grandfather never could, because he's reaching those people who are down and out, jail, failures, fallen down, drug addicts, everything like that. He's reaching those people that is probably his grandfather never could. But I think about, so who talked with Billy Graham? And who talked with the person that talked with Billy Graham? And think about that person talking to one-on-one person, individual, who talked to Billy Graham one-on-one, who impacted millions around the world, who impacted a grandson who's now impacting millions around the world again. Right? The impact of one, you have no idea what God is going to do. You think, I'm just one person. That waitress you see at the restaurant, that cashier you see at Market Basket, that nurse or doctor you see when you go to your doctor's appointments, what if you're there to impact them for Christ? See, it just takes one, the impact of one. So how about you? No one should yield to God because of an obligation to me. No one should yield to God because they feel like they have a duty because of their family. No one should want God to use them because they feel under bondage of some work or some religious duty. But we should all allow God to use us in His kingdom because we love Him. And because we love Him, we love the things He loves. His people, His church. Maybe this is a place somewhere where He will choose to use you. Maybe there's a location that He wants to take you somewhere. Maybe He has a ministry right where you're at, where He wants you to realize you're just not one person. You're one who is united with Him, who's united to thousands of others. What makes you a mighty force in His kingdom is because you surrender and yield to Him, and He can use you for His kingdom. Maybe we're all here today for such a time as this. We're here so God can speak to our heart and move in our hearts to the Holy Spirit. Maybe there's one here today that needs to hear this message and will take it and use it and impact His kingdom for hundreds and thousands of people. And He needs you to yield and say, I may not be able to do it alone, and I feel alone, but God, I know I'm not alone. I'll go do it, whatever you ask me to do. As you lead and you give me wisdom, I will stand and do the thing you want me to do. He wants to use you to impact the world for Christ. The question before you is this: will you let Him? We have all at times in our lives thought that we don't really count, that we're just one person. There isn't a lot that we can do. Nothing is further from the truth. You can do way more than you think you can, even as one person, if you'll yield to God. If you give your life and direction to Him. The impact of one can change the history of a family. The impact of one can change the history of a church. The impact of one can change the history of a city, of a company, of a nation. Will you allow God to use you in His kingdom to impact the world for Him? That's the question before you this morning. Let's all stand and praise Him together in prayer